If you really want to understand the one discipline that separates successful projects from the ones that fail, it's this: controlling project scope. Now, this isn't just some textbook skill. It's your strategic defense against chaos, against budget overruns, and against blowing past your deadlines. Today, we're going to break down the professional's framework for getting this right, and we're moving way beyond theory and into real actionable strategy. So let me ask you a question. What is the number one silent killer of projects? You know, that invisible force that just completely derails timelines, bloats up the budget, and sinks even the most promising ideas? Think about projects you've been on that have gone off the rails. What was really going on under the surface? The answer, as many of you have probably guessed, is scope creep. Oh yeah, it's that slow, sneaky addition of features and functions and little requirements that were never ever part of the original plan. Every single person in project management has felt the sting of this. It always starts with a simple, harmless, "Hey, can we just add?" and it ends with a project that you don't even recognize. Now, the official definition calls it uncontrolled expansion, and it wants you to really focus on that word, uncontrolled. Look, change itself isn't the enemy, not at all. In fact, change is often necessary. The real problem is unmanaged change, when people just start adding things without a formal process to check the impact on your time, your money, and your people. Well, that's when it becomes poison for your project's success.
The good news is, we have a way to fight back. There's a formal, disciplined framework designed specifically to combat this: the control scope process. Now, don't think of it as a giant wall to stop all change. It's more like a really sophisticated filtering system that helps you manage it with authority and with precision. This is how the pros go from just reacting to problems to proactively controlling the project's boundaries.
All right, here's our game plan. First, we're going to define what this process actually is. Then, we'll walk through the essential inputs, the stuff you need to even get started. After that, we'll look at the analytical tools you'll use to figure out what's going on and the actionable outputs you'll create to make decisions. And finally, we'll tie it all together with the big picture change control system. So, what is control scope really? Well, it's the continuous process of monitoring your project scope against the plan, and then meticulously managing any and all changes to your scope baseline. And notice I said continuous. This is not a one-and-done checkpoint you do at the end of a phase. It's an ongoing discipline. The goal is simple, but it's incredibly powerful. Make sure the only work getting done is the work we all agreed to do. To do this right, you can't just start measuring things out of the blue. Think about it like a ship's navigator. Before they can check if the ship is on course, what do they need? They need their charts, their compass, their planned route. In project management, these are our inputs. They're the documents that define what on course even means for us. Your inputs really fall into 4 key buckets. First up is the project management plan. That's your master blueprint. It tells you how you're going to control scope. Second, you've got your project documents, things like your requirements list. Third is work performance data. This is the raw truth from the ground, what's actually getting done. And finally, you have organizational process assets, basically your company's existing rules and templates that help guide the whole process. Now, out of all those inputs, one of them is the absolute king, the scope baseline. This isn't just a draft. This is the approved, signed-off, official version of what you are building. It is the non-negotiable yardstick that you're going to measure all progress and every single change request against. Let me be clear. Without a box-solid baseline, you aren't controlling scope. You're just documenting chaos. The scope baseline itself has 3 parts, and each one adds another layer of detail. First, the project scope statement. Think of this as the narrative. It tells the story of what you're doing and, just as important, what you're not doing. Next is the work breakdown structure, or WBS. This is the visual breakdown of all the work. Here's a pro tip for you. If a piece of work can't be found on the WBS, it is out of scope, period. And finally, the WBS dictionary gives you all the nitty-gritty details for every single item on that WBS. No ambiguity. Together, these 3 things create an ironclad definition of the work. Okay, so we have our baseline, our planned course. Now it's time to check our actual position. This is where the analytical tools come in. These are like your navigational instruments. They're how you figure out if you actually are where you think you are. The 2 big techniques here answer 2 very different but equally critical questions. First, there's variance analysis. This is a snapshot in time. It asks, where are we right now compared to the plan? It just gives you the raw deviation. But then you have trend analysis. This is all about forecasting. It looks at your performance over time and asks, okay, if we keep going like this, where are we going to end up? One diagnoses the present, the other predicts the future. A great consultant uses both to see the whole picture. And this really gets to the heart of the matter. Just identifying the variance, that's the easy part. The real strategic work is figuring out its root cause and its size. Is this just a tiny little hiccup we can absorb, or is this a massive problem that points to a fundamental flaw in how we planned or executed this thing? Answering that question is what tells you whether you need to take corrective action to get back on track or preventive action to make sure you don't get even more lost.
So, we've gathered our inputs. We've done our analysis. What now? What do we actually produce? Well, this control scope process isn't just some academic exercise. It generates very specific, very tangible outputs. These are the formal documents that are going to drive decisions and make things happen.
This process creates 4 key outputs that follow a really logical path. First, we turn that raw data into work performance information, which gives us context around our variances. Now, if that information tells us we need to make a change, it formally triggers a change request. Then, and only then, if that request gets approved, it leads to official updates to both the big project management plan and other specific project documents. That way, everyone is working from the same new approved reality. I want you to understand that the change request is the absolute linchpin of this entire control system. It's the formal proposal that takes any idea, any problem, any new wish from a stakeholder, and channels it into a structured review process. It takes those hallway conversations and forces them into a documented workflow. This is the main thing that stops those unauthorized, off-the-books changes from completely derailing your project. All right, this next part is absolutely critical to understand. The control scope process, it identifies and documents the need for a change. It does not approve the change itself. Think of it as a feeder system. It generates these formal requests that then go into the organization's much broader, integrated change control process for the final decision. So here's how that workflow looks in the real world. Step 1. In our control scope process, we spot a variance. Step 2. We create that formal change request. That request then gets sent over to the Perform Integrated Change Control process. This is where a group, usually called a Change Control Board, or CCB, evaluates the request. And they don't just look at scope. They look at its total impact on cost, schedule, risk, quality, everything. They have the ultimate authority to say yes, no, or maybe later. And when you see a chart like this, it tells you a story about a mature, healthy project. You might submit, say, 10 change requests, but only 3 of them get approved. Now, that is not a sign of failure. That is a sign of incredible success. It means the process is working. It's protecting the project, it's protecting the company's investment from scope creep by making sure that only changes with a real, verified business case are allowed to touch that sacred baseline. And that brings us right to the ultimate benefit, the whole point of all of this, maintaining the integrity of your scope baseline. This entire process ensures that every single change is intentional, it's evaluated, and it's formally approved. It's the strategic shift from being a passive victim of change to being an active master of it. That right there is the essence of professional project control. So I'll leave you with this one question to think about for your own projects. Are you just tracking scope, or are you actually controlling it? Are you just reporting on problems after they've already happened, or are you proactively protecting your baseline to steer your project to success? The difference isn't just in the words, it's everything. Thanks for your time.